I wanted to make a short video about the naturalistic fallacy. Now, it is usually thought that this is a reason why you cannot go from a is to a ought. So you can't go from this is a fact in nature to this is what we ought to do. So, for example, in the context of Darwinism, what is usually said is, well, Darwinian evolution may say that our nature is that we are red in tooth and claw, and over time we became more moral because it was needed for human cooperation and sympathy and empathy and love and all these types of emotions. Our humanity came from a need for survival, and so we went beyond our own fitness, and we started to actually develop this type of moral faculties. Now, so they argue, okay, it doesn't matter if deep down we only care, well, natural selection has created us just to care about our genes, and all of these other things are byproducts of that. We don't need to act in a selfish way. So the selfish gene doesn't lead to selfish behavior per se. Now, I wanted to just give a few thoughts on this because I thought this was a bit too hasty as a conclusion. So, yes, it's true that to go from this is the way the world is to this is the way the world ought to be is a fallacy, because there is nothing in the supposed facts of reality which force us to act in a certain way. So we are red in tooth and claw in terms of our deep down human behavior, deep down human selfishness, but that doesn't mean we need to be selfish, right? We have to be selfish. It doesn't mean that selfishness is good. That I understand that is fallacious thinking, but consider something else. Consider that when we are eating a certain type of food, we are told by advertisers, this is natural, buy this product because it's natural. This is the paleo diet, this is what we ate during our paleo time. So they're trying to go from this is natural to this is good. Of course, that's fallacious too. If we say that since this is the way that what we ate in the past, so this is what we should eat. But there is something there. There is something there, which is why it's quite powerful as something that's advertised, which is that it suits you to act in a way that you were evolved to act. Now, evolve to, as we know, you don't really evolve to, but for the sake of, there's a lack of better way of putting it. So if we were living in a particular era in which we had certain types of foods which suited our digestive system better, then eating those foods is better for us than eating something totally different to what we were adapted for. Therefore, it isn't just simply that, oh, you cannot go from an is to a ought, and therefore it's a fallacy. Yes and no, because you can go from an is not directly to an ought, but you can go from an is to maybe this is going to be better for you in terms of your health, or it suits your predisposition better. Rather than being an ought, it's more like information. So it's kind of like this, right? One of the feminists that I mentioned in the previous talk on atheism, feminism, and Darwinism, she wants to fight patriarchy. She wants to fight for feministic values. But what she says is it's better for feminists not to basically put up a fight against, Darwinism. And obviously she wants to get rid of the male bias, but it's better for basically us to understand the actual biological basis of difference in gender difference before we try and fight for equality. That's basically her point. And that makes sense. So she's not going from an is to an ought, but what she's saying is the is informs what we may want to do, not what we have to do, not what we ought to do, but informs what we want to fight for. So say, for example, if she wants to fight for equality amongst the genders, then it's better for her to accept that patriarchy was the way that human societies earlier on they actually were. You can't deny that. And you can't deny that this is just the way that is hardwired in us to be patriarchal, right? And so therefore, if you want to fight something like patriarchy, it's better for you to at least know where the origin of these things is from. Likewise, it will also inform the limits of change of what you may want to do. So for example, you may want to do something which is biologically not possible. You may want to promote an idea which we were hardwired and evolved to do the exact opposite. So I understand that Darwinists are saying, and they have been saying for a long time, when Darwinism doesn't lead to social Darwinism because that is going from an is to an ought. So they try and say it's Herbert Spencer's fault, right? It's not Darwin's fault. So they even say stuff like it shouldn't be called Darwinism, it should be called Spencerism or whatever it is. But fair enough. I grant that you have an argument there. But what I don't grant is that the supposed fact in nature of Darwinism that we have read in tooth and claw, that informs the limits of what we can potentially do in terms of our actions. Because if we are biologically selected to do something, then to do something of the opposite effect is going to be very, very difficult. So I see this thrown around a lot whenever you talk about the implications of Darwinism and therefore the impact of that on human behavior, as if that is going to protect Darwinism from critique. It doesn't, because firstly, is and ought distinction is not known by the majority of people, hence why social Darwinism took off. And majority of people will probably not ever know about the is-ought distinction. I mean, we have to remember that majority of mankind is not philosophically inclined to learn deep philosophical ideas and concepts. So pragmatically, they will go from an is to an ought. So there is, the behavior is going to be impacted by Darwinism, regardless whether that's valid or not. Secondly, the is going to inform what you may or may not be able to do. And also, when you talk about the is and ought and whatnot, right? And you love to criticize those who talk about the implications of Darwinism, then I want to know, why do you not then criticize Richard Dawkins when he says the ultimate rationale of life is survival and reproduction? Isn't he going from an is to an ought? And this is something that he clearly says in Selfish Gene, although he does in other places say that we need to act in an anti-Darwinian way. There's a clear contradiction. So, I always find it strange that, you guys jump forward to try and point out fallacies which are being sometimes made legitimate, as in you have a legitimate claim to a fallacy being made. However, when one of yours says something or does something that is false, there isn't that impulse to go and basically attack that person and say, what kind of fallacious thinking is this? Another thing I was actually thinking about is it does have an actual impact, knowing your, say for example, Darwinism is like a universal acid, right? It corrodes away morality, ethics, meaning, purpose, value, desirability. It corrodes away all those things. So selfishness, if somebody finds out, right, there is no ontological principles which are unassailable, which are immutable, and morality just evolved within us for cooperation and for survival and reproduction, that is going to impact the way that they view morality. Now again, you may try and jump and say, no, that's the is-ought fallacy. No, it's not. it's not the case that they're going from an is to an ought. Well, in some cases people are. The supposed fact that morality is a illusion created by our genes to help us survive, that Darwinian myth, which I'm calling a supposed fact here, that Darwinian supposed fact, that will impact someone's behavior. If it's not an ought behavior that they say this is what I ought to do, it will impact the decisions that they actually make. So anyway, I hope in this short video you guys see that when Darwinists try and defend Darwinism and the impact of Darwinism on society by saying naturalistic fallacy, there's actually a lot more going on. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I look forward to your comments.